Da 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 da! What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes. Get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never popped into one of my lives before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And this is my Monday to Friday podcast that I do every week. And I've been doing this for years. And I have another show on Sunday night, Chatters Live. It's where we come down, right? Some of these topics that I cover, I understand they're a little bit hard to digest sometimes. So on Sunday nights, we keep it casual. We try to. I am who I am. And I am so grateful and I am very lucky to have such amazing crew that join me in this little adventure that I'm on. This adventure that's going to last me until like I'm 80, 90, right? Years old, till they haul me off and they say, that's it. Or, you know what? We get thrown into an ice age or there's a meteor. You never know from one day to the next, right? That change is always happening and it's in our adapt and conquer. It's in our never giving up. It's our searching out for answers and recognizing that this is our life, right? Cindy gets this one shot to create the best human being she possibly can. And you know what? I am so grateful that I stumbled onto YouTube, that the YouTube community welcomed me in and gave me that opportunity, right? Through my own choices to give it a shot, to see if I had something to contribute so that, maybe I'm just not the one person creating the best human being out there, that everybody has that opportunity for themselves to contribute into creating the best human being that you want to. Understanding we're all different and we're all going to contribute a little bit something different to the table, right? I get it. Not everybody wants to be a YouTuber, but you know what? I don't want to climb Mount Everest. I'm not searching out a gold medal in the Olympics, right? These are my passions and these are my little bit of contributions, to people who might follow suit in whatever their passions are and apply some of those techniques, some of those ideas, a little bit of that optimism, understanding that the world, right, likes to throw wrenches. And being a highly sensitive and being an empath, it's not like we're special needs, but we move different. And again, we are different and we have every right to move the way that we want to. We have every right to search out the world for people like us. And again, I would never even have realized, that there were people like me, let alone even understanding that I could create for myself, that I could move in the direction that I wanted to move and not be so codependent, not be so reliant on what other people wanted me to do or what other people thought I should do or what they thought of me. And that one took a little bit of a while. And, if you're anything like me, it's going to take you a little bit of a while too. For the first time when I started out on YouTube, I never came in front of the camera, but I did practice, right? With always that anticipation that, at some point I would come in front of the camera. It only took me, I would say, maybe a couple of years, and I was consistently, right, showing up, not just in my urban exploration, not just in my humorous, and I think sweet. I go back into my own adventure videos and I watch them for myself. It's like going through a photo album and reminiscing about, oh, I remember this and I remember this. And it's funny that I say that because in this digital age, it's all digital, isn't it? It's all AI created, that people actually do not have the physical memories of their lives, maybe their wedding rings. But what about those photo albums, right? What about all those other ways that we learned to communicate for the future, to understand, like the Dead Sea Scrolls, or some of those amazing works by amazing thought leaders out there, people that we might not have ever gotten to recognize, that we might have never understood that they were even here, right? If not for that physical left behind, right? That right. Even in ancient Egypt, right? They were taking the chisels and they were chiseling on the concrete or plaster or the mortar or whatever they were using on the rocks. And they were telling their stories. And, you know, language was different then. But without the Rosetta Stone, we would never have known, right? Maybe now in this day and age with AI learning, they would have figured it out. But without that relatable of the Greek language on the Rosetta Stone, we would never have been able to read hieroglyphs. And we would have lost a big part of our history. Today, I was thinking about that a little bit. What are we going to leave behind, you guys? Right? 100,000 years when generations look back at the past, right? The cavemen have got their art. The Colosseum is still going to be standing, right? If we know anything about architecture, we know that the concrete and the stonework, they last for hundreds, thousands of years, Gotepi Tepi, these names that are so hard for me to pronounce sometimes, right? And I practice in them because I love history. I love going back into archaeological finds. They just figured out how they got the stones to Stonehenge. Just before I went live, I saw the post and went, oh my goodness, I can't forget to go back into that one and read that one. But, Stonehenge, another, right? We would be absolutely boggled 100,000 years from now without the information that we're picking up now in this AI learning to understand, right? Even in these cities that we're finding in South America, and the ships going back thousands of years, they just found another ship. Was it a Mesopotamian ship just off the coast of Spain? And it's so amazing. These satellites are beaming down and they're just absolutely scanning everything, and we are just in the beginning of discoveries, right? It's just absolutely amazing how science and history and medicine and numbers and astronomy, right? That we're all learning, right? We're all learning from the past if we choose to. I choose to. That's the person that I'm creating, and creating the best human being that I possibly can. I want to know about the humans. And I want to come in here and share what I learn and what I discover, because again, it's part of my brand in exploring the inside and the outside. And history is in the outside, and it's a lot of what I was doing in my urban exploration and exploring the history like that, right? But even if I'm not exploring those abandoned farms and abandoned houses, abandoned churches going back, you know to the times of the voyageurs and the Hudson Bay Company and the first people who settled Canada. If you don't know, I'm from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Welcome, welcome. I know we're this close to each other, in this day and age that possibly you could be on the other side of the world. But isn't it amazing that in this moment that we can share insights and ideas? But what happens, right? If something were to happen and this digital age crashed, right? They said 200,000 years ago, human beings just appeared. Homo sapiens just appeared, right? But that isn't the case because they've just discovered again. I think it was in Spain, a skull, and they've dated it back. We are not 200,000 years as Homo sapiens, as modern man. We're actually 300,000 years now. I follow some thought leaders who have been using these specific dates in the content and in their explanations and in their discoveries. And, right, we're going to find out more going forward. Science and all these other, are they networks? You know, Scientists and medicine and numbers and astrology, like they're all coming together now in making these discoveries. But what if this day of AI learning just crashed? Have we documented anything? Have we physically imprinted so that, when they discover us, right? Or I'm not saying anything, but this is just an analogy, right? Because there are lots of times in our history where there's been nothing. We can't, right? We still don't understand what's going on with the Sphinx. If there was proper documentation, if they had carved it into the into the rock and into the mortar, that there might be a physical evidence to that, but that's a time period in our history that is actually missing, right? AI learning, oh my goodness, if the digital age were to crash, right? If there wasn't an opportunity for people like me to come in and share, how would we know what went on in our lifetime? And I expect it's very, very big, whatever it is. I believe that the whole world is about to wake up to some crazy, crazy time. I mean, the whole world. And we're all going to be busy and trying to help each other out in that process because, if it's a ride like anything I went through, it's going to be challenging. And, without the digital age, because this is how I came in. I came in with AI learning, right? The morning I woke up to my first ideas of something more, something better, something I wasn't the day before, right? Google and YouTube were right there with the lessons. And within a couple of hours, I had enough to get me started. And through my own choices, right, I was able to make a little bit of movement for myself and then get to the point where I actually enjoyed what I did, right? At first, I was doing it because, well, I didn't know what I was in, right? I was trying to get myself out of a hairy, scary situation because the moment I woke up to any of these ideas, my physical life absolutely crashed in every aspect of my life. And that's the truth. And let me just get out my notifications. And Eugene's here. Hello, Eugene. I'm doing great tonight. I hope you're doing good tonight too. We didn't have a topic yet. I will pull a card, but it just came into my head and well, it didn't come into head. It just right? The flow is the flow, but getting back into that, where's the physicality? If this digital age were to just be pinged out in a breath, where would we be in that process of learning? Yes, there are people out there who have written amazing content. Oh, you can't see my books. I got a bookcase behind me with thought leadership from different creators and different minds. And these minds are from the present and they're from the past. But where are we if we are not writing those books? If we are not chipping away on that stone, what are we going to leave behind to signify that we actually had a brain, we actually had a thought, that we actually tried in the creation of the best human being possible, and that no matter what happened, and they might not know what happened because we didn't leave anything behind. We didn't even leave the process, right? For me, myself, I didn't leave anything behind, right? Except what I left on my social media. These lessons may be gone, but maybe not. Because the first thing that came into my mind is in the epigenetics that everything that I make in that movement for myself, right? That it is going to be carrying over no matter what the situation. And, I would be optimistic and hopeful, right? And I'm not a big fan of that word hopeful because for me, that word hopeful is a help me, give me, get me out of this situation. I tend to use the word optimism, but when there's a possibility of, right, it not working out the way I want to, or we want to, or you want to, that, that, right? Did we leave something physical behind to say, hey, I was here, I tried, I gave it a shot? Did any of us do that? Any of us, right? We go back 10,000 years, all that's left in go teppy teppy, which is one of the oldest communities in the entire world in Turkey, right? That all that's left are these pillars of phalluses. And we are in that process because we are in AI learning. And in the moment, we have those tools and the access to that information through the digital age that we can find out. We're making great progress, but in a moment, those tools could be gone and we might not ever know what it was, how smart they were, right? I only said that because now they're changing their stance on what and who Neanderthals were. If you went to a museum 20 years ago, they would all been looking like gorillas and monkeys and not wearing clothes and not being able to speak. And right? And now we're finding their tools and they're finding the graves that they actually cared for their loved ones. Yes, we're finding out other things about the Neanderthals, but at least we're finding them out. We're learning about our history because it's through our history and our past that we are going to better learn in the creating of the best human being possibly. And you know what? A lot of these organizations, these networks, these thought leaders are going to be treading water, right? Because they've been putting it out there that, right? All of a sudden, 200,000 years ago, Homo sapiens came into the picture. Well, no, because now it's been scientifically proven that they've been around for 300,000 years. And you might think, well, What does that matter, right? 200,000 years, 300,000 years. But when you're joining forces with historians and archaeologists and the scientists and the geologists who are doing the testing of the soil samples. And then we have thought leaders out there getting on stage and saying, right, this happened 200,000 years ago. And you know what else happened 200,000 years ago? Mankind, modern human, Homo sapiens came into light. What a coincidence. What are the connections in that? Woohoo, right? And now they'll have to backtrack in that information that and it's true, we can make mistakes in that. But when we put it out there as if it's a truth, and not say, you know what, at this moment, right? This is where we're at. Wouldn't it be neat if this incident coincided with this one? And not saying, well, that incident did coincide with this one, and make an untruth a truth, even though it wasn't meant to be, right? It just seemed feasible. It made sense. And you put it out there like a truth. And people gobble that up. And then when the science and the geology and, just the other evidence comes to the surface, what do? We bash it down and we go, no, Neanderthals were gorilla and covered in hair and they couldn't speak. And we're just digging our own graves in that. And we're making ourselves look foolish and untruthful because we put an untruth out there as if it is a truth, right? We're going to make mistakes. We are going to make mistakes. And it's amazing when we are course corrected in that. But I'd like to be very careful in what I put out there as a truth. I'm just like everybody else. I want to see the evidence, right? Before I jump into anything. And saying that came into my head is, my mom say, if somebody told you to jump off the bridge, would you? Right? We have to use our own noodles. We have to use our own intuition, use all that knowledge that we have and feel out the truth, right? We can feel out the people because for them, right, what they're expressing and what they're divvying out as a truth, they might actually believe that themselves, right? And in that, right, you'll believe because they believe and because you respect them, because you admire them, because you really did learn from them, right? That we might call a truth an untruth. So I believe, right? I don't know, but I believe that it would be a really good idea, like we do when we do gravestones, right? The person's name and the date of birth and the date of death, that these graves are around for hundreds, sometimes thousands of years. And even though, right, the 1,000-year-old ones, we might not, unless they're like an Egyptian tomb, we might not ever know who they were. But I can tell you, 200 years back, right, we can read the tombstones and they've left something behind to say, I was here, right? I was here. And so there's a concern for me. I gave it some thought today. I think we need to, right, get out our chisels and our picks to make sure that somebody finds this civilization, right? I'm not saying civilization of Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, but our civilization of this world, right? If somebody from another planet, if another human being or another being came from another universe that they came here, that and then they tracked everything. Wouldn't that be disappointed that they understood everything about the Egyptians because we did the work on that? That going back through history, that all these civilizations that we know up to this point, how we got here. But what about this point, right? Being AI learning, being a digital age, everything. I don't have any physical photographs, right? I had a little bit of flood in my apartment from a neighbor, ruined them. I pulled them out, the ones that I had, and I photographed them and made digital copies. I did keep those pictures, but that paper is only going to last so long, isn't it? And if something should happen, right? Where's our footprint, right? Where's our footprint? Maybe they will find footprints of modern man, just like they found footprints of the Neanderthals and all those other, right, human beings that walked the earth, right? And they'll find us and they'll go, ooh, what was this? It must be just something that came from the Denisovans and the, right, Homo sapiens. Oh no, Homo sapiens and the Neanderthals and the Denisovans, right? And just make second guesses and then maybe put that out to the new world, right? 10,000 years from now because they didn't have any other clue. There's no other evidence, right? They'll know we were here. They'll dig up our bones, our fossilized bones, but that's all they'll have because everything we brought to the table, right, is in digital. It is in storage, right? Online, right? It's something I think about, right? Somebody should tell a story of us, right? Carve it onto a side of a cliff saying, we were here, right? We were here. Right? We want to leave something behind. I don't want to be part of a stage that, you know, that this whole generation is just wiped out. Not just wiped out, but wiped out in the paperwork, wiped out in something to leave for the future that we could better understand, right? Or left for the future so that they can pick up where we left off. Because didn't we do a lot of work? We really did make an impact in this world, and it would be such a shame if that wasn't seen 10,000 years from now. It's only an analogy, you guys, right? Maybe this day of AI learning is going to go on for millions of years now, right? Maybe it will, but maybe it won't, right? So it's important to leave something physically behind besides our bones. Okay, you guys. So we're going to quickly pick a word. Thank you, Melvin. Thank you. Um, We're going to pick a word. We're just going to go into it for a couple of minutes. First impression, and then I'm going to go off for a walk. It's getting a little bit dark. Tonight's been getting a little dark earlier, partly because of all the smoke going on, if you haven't heard about the wildfires going on here, but also partly because we're supposed to be starting to cool off a little bit now, going into August and going into September, and I'm looking forward uh, to fall. We're going on a trip in September, you guys. I'm doing my darndest to make sure that that trip is happening. Right? I've never missed a trip. Oh my goodness, I have to say, 20 years. Right? Been in Ontario for maybe at least 6 or 7 years. Before that, I was exploring here in Manitoba But okay, you guys, let's get into the word. I've got a walk and a cup of coffee happening. And the word we have tonight is movement. Oh, now isn't that a curious word? Especially after this conversation that I had, right? Because wouldn't it be such a shame if the movement that this world has made in the past 25 years, it hasn't been long, you guys. It really hasn't been that long. And in that span of time, how far have we come? Wouldn't that be a shame if all of that was just dust, if it was just something that wouldn't be discovered, that we didn't leave a Rosetta Stone behind? Let me see. Uh, Eugene says, my dad had to go to the hospital at the South Hill, Virginia. He was in pain in the legs. Oh my goodness. Eugene, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to hear that. I hope he is up and about really fast. Oh my goodness. Are you okay, Eugene? I hope you're having an okay time of it, that you're managing okay, right? These days of issues in our lives, they're always going to be there. And it's in our adaptability, it's in that being able to ride those waves, right? And understanding, right? We only have control over what we have control over, and we can sympathize and we can put ourselves in somebody else's shoes. We can do some caregiving. We can take it as an opportunity to clear up some of those questions that we might have at some point. And I'm just going to turn this light around. I am practicing in my setup here, and it'll be a few adjustments during the course of the next couple of weeks. But yeah, I'm not that's much better. I'm not a big fan of that white light, so I'll understand if I just put that light on, and right, we are good to go. Okay, so we got this movement right now. And I was saying, wouldn't that be a shame if the movement that we've made in the past 25 years just disappeared, that we didn't have anything to show for it, that nobody took that chisel and that pick and just carved out our story, right? Maybe there'll be some architecture, but right, we're not working with the stones anymore, are we? We are working with the concrete, but even the concrete is not going to last like it did, in the time of the Romans and the Colosseum, because we are right. We put steel rods in there, and then we pour that steel rods. They rot and rust, and everything around it becomes weakened, and it's not the same, right? I would think maybe after 1,000 years, like even they would be coming down, right? Isn't that funny that we are not as inclined to be as correct as the Egyptians were in the making of our architecture, right? That we're saving money, we're doing sloppy jobs, and we're not looking you know, towards 10,000 years from now, that some of these buildings that we're creating right now won't be here, right? Won't be here because they'll rot. It's like, we're only finding Neanderthals in the caves. We're not finding them, in other places because we don't know. We can check, riverbanks and different places where the land might not have changed so much when Neanderthals were around. But the only place we really know to look for them are in the caves, right? But they just weren't living in caves, right? They were making their spears with wood, their homes with wood, right? The cave was a bonus, right? If they were to happen to come across the caves, they would be utilized. And that's what information that we have in this moment. But I would like to see things be documented physically rather than just in the digital, right? We are in a day and age right now that is unlike anything that we have ever gone through, right? Not to say that we haven't gone through similar movement, because I think in each stage of evolution, there are challenges and there are things that are removed and there are things that are expanded on. And again, things that just appear out of nowhere. They are discovering animals now and fish and species that have never been on the earth before, and right, they just appeared. And so it is going to take a while. We'll find out where they stemmed off from, but they definitely stemmed off from somewhere. So it wasn't like a magic trick, right? Well, maybe God had his hand in there and said, "Oh, there you go," right? But in all honesty, right, there are answers, and I would like for the future, 10,000, 100,000 years from now, that they would know our story, because this past 25, right, let's even say 50 years, haven't we come a long way? Haven't we contributed to the betterment of the world? Haven't we contributed to the betterment of ourselves and creating the best human being we possibly can? That we had those answers and we had the ability and we were able to do it in a way, like like I said, for me, without the AI learning, without Google, without YouTube, I don't know. I wouldn't have met, you know, the people that I was meant to impact and the people who were supposed to impact me. I wouldn't have made much movement, right? The state that I was in when I first walked into some of these ideas, it wasn't a good state, right? I am 100 times better, thousands fold, right? That I actually have a future when I quite possibly could be sitting in a place looking out at the sky going, what did I do with my life? Right? What did I do with my life? That's not the case. And in my choices, I choose to keep making that movement forward. And that's the word we have tonight. I'm moving, you guys. And there are lots of people out there making movements for themselves and making movements for others. And it is my optimistic idea that in showing up here every day and having these wacky conversations that might not be so wacky, that somebody might take me serious and go, oh my goodness, I never thought of that before, and go into their workshop and grab their chisel and their, right? And get out there and tell their story, tell our story, right? We're always moving forward, you guys. We're always moving forward. But those resources that we have now, even though they serve us so well, they're meant to be here right now because they're giving us those choices. And not all of us are making those choices to delve in looking for answers. They're just saying, that's so and so's problem. That's not my concern, right? I'm going to the bar tonight. And, right? If that's the case, I hope God trips you up somewheres along the way going to the bar to offer you up an opportunity for you to learn something, right? That might lead you into wanting to learn a little bit something else. That's what movement is, right? Movement is having the courage and the bravery, right? To make movement, to make a choice. All you have to do is make that choice. If you make that choice and stick to it, right? Change has to happen because you're making a choice, right? Even in saying, I'm just going to sit here and do nothing. Well, that's a change, isn't it? Right? You're going to sit there and you're going to do nothing. And all that stuff that you could have learned, that you could have had an opportunity in the creation of the best human being that you are, the best human being that I could, that we could all miss out on that, right? And that's not the way, right? I came into this, right? It was never give up, ride the waves, the curiosity saying, what's next? The wonder going, wow, the crazy town that makes me search out the answers and the experts and the specialists in knowing, right? Because a lot of what we're doing, a lot of that movement that we're making, right? A doctor's not going to solve that for us. The only person who's going to solve that for us is us and our choices, right? And that's how we're going to keep moving, riding those waves, adapting and conquering, and paying attention to where we got things wrong, not setting up somebody in their own movement, right? They trusted you, they trusted me. And then just to, like I said, what if, imagine, I wonder, those are not down packed. Those are not perceptions, right? Perspectives. They're perceptions. Perception is the learning process in order to get to a perspective. The perspective is the belief, right? I have a lot of those. You have a lot of those. But we could have more, couldn't we? I know we could. Movement forward. That was a good one. And it just kind of worked out well with what I came in and started yibber yabbing about. I hope your dad is feeling better. Oh yeah, I hope he gets drains. I hope he gets some antibiotics and he's up and moving, right? And take care of yourself too, right? Take care of yourself too. Okay, you guys. That's my good cheer and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.